To the special city council work session for March 4th, 2024. Maria, would you please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here?
Manetza.
Here. Tonight, this evening, we have a presentation on the Forest Management Subcommittee update. Tim, did you want to introduce this, or shall I go directly to Gene?
Go directly to.
Okay, we have with us Gene Madden and Jim Matthews, representing the Forest Management Subcommittee.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
your
you.
show.
Great, wonderful. So thanks for your time tonight. Our plan, Jim and I, is to present for just about 10 minutes and then have 20 minutes for questions and discussion. So to keep on our timeline, I have a bit of a script, so bear with me. So I'll be presenting the slides, but in all full transparency, Jim was really the driving force behind the deer management plan and absolutely the expert on the subject. So he will answer most of your questions after the presentation, likely. And this plan has been shared with the Sustainability and Energy Commission, and on a unanimous vote, they recommended its presentation to the council. So I believe the plan has been provided to all of you in written form, if I'm not mistaken, but if it hasn't been, we're happy to provide it. And you can look at the references and all the resources we used in the slides that you. Sound good?
Okay.
So these, as a reminder, are the members of the Sustainability and Energy Forest Management Subcommittee. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tim and Ashley and Eric Law for all of their guidance throughout this process. They've been incredibly helpful. And tonight, we want to review our recommendations and ask for your support on a deer management plan, which is absolutely critical to the overall forest management plan, which was approved in November of 2022. As a reminder, deer management is just one of the 4 pillars of the forest management plan. Our goal is to restore the ecosystem of our forests in order to support a diversity of plant and animal species. We modeled the Save Our Forests campaign after the very successful Save Our Catwalk campaign. And the goal is to educate citizens on the really dire threats facing our forests and to raise money to ensure their survival for generations. And as a plug, we are the Eagles fundraiser of choice this year. So please put April 13th on your calendar and plan to come to the Eagles fundraiser for Save Our Forest Grand Haven. Very exciting. So specifically, we're referring the 200 acres are Lake Forest Cemetery, Mulligan's Hollow, and Duncan Woods. Those are the 200 acres we're referring to. Our goal is to restore the forest not only to support a healthy population of deer, but also a biodiverse array of native plants, insects, birds, bees, and butterflies. In other words, we really want to reestablish a healthy forest ecosystem. As I mentioned on other occasions, I took this photo at Amon Park near Grand Rapids last spring. And you see a lush, healthy, and diverse understory, which is both beautiful to look at and it provides habitat for insects and mammals that live in the park. There are many benefits to ensuring our forests are healthy. The first 4 bullet points of this slide are taken from the city's own master plan and reinforce how our forests contribute to the vibrancy and livability of our community. We're also in a climate crisis, and plants and trees are great at sequestering carbon. They also reduce runoff and erosion and improve our air quality. In other words, we need the forests, and thanks to invasive species and deer overbrowsing, the forests need us. So what will happen if we don't act? You already see bare sand on the forest floor. We're poised to lose up to 95% of our beech, hemlock, and oak trees. If that happens, the resulting erosion could threaten homes perched on dunes. Plus, we'll lose the wild spaces that both residents and visitors enjoy and value. These are images from Mulligan's Hollow and illustrate the tragic loss of both native trees and understory. The lower middle photo was taken at Rosie Mound Park. I'm sure you've all been there. You see a little green in there, and what that is there are plants thriving in that deer exclosure in a fenced-in area, but they're severely lacking everywhere else. That's a quick overview of the big picture, but tonight we're here to focus on recommendations for deer management. Deer management is a critical component of the overall forest management plan, and Jim consulted with all of these experts, and probably more, to arrive at the recommendations seen in the coming slides. So our deer management agenda will include a brief history of deer management in the city of Grand Haven, very brief. What we see are the critical needs, our goals, and our recommendations for next steps. So now we're getting into the meat of the presentation. So while communities have made decisions to manage the deer based on complaints by residents, we feel like we're going the extra mile above and beyond to determine the exact number of deer and to calculate a sustainable herd size. The city first convened an urban deer task force in 2007, which conducted a thermal image flyover, and they counted 156 deer in the city. That's far above the accepted biological carrying capacity, which I'll detail in a moment. Harvests were conducted in 2008 and 2017, but the full deer management plan was never implemented. In 2022, deer management was again identified as critical to saving our urban forests. Let's summarize why the need is so critical. There are real threats to human health, including deer vehicle accidents and Lyme disease. We've suffered an extreme loss of biodiversity and habitat in our forests due to the loss of understory from deer overbrowsing. The ecosystem services the forests naturally provide are breaking down, and that's why you see so much erosion. And because the deer prefer to browse on native plants, invasives like garlic mustard are flourishing. Lastly, due to a lack of healthy native plants, the deer are so hungry, they are migrating into city neighborhoods where they come into contact with cars and people. They damage city parks and boulevard trees and wreak havoc on both commercial and residential landscapes. As you can see, deer vehicle accidents are up significantly from 2012, and we're not alone. There were more deer vehicle collisions in Michigan in 2022 than at any time in the last 10 years. I feel like we need to be part of the solution. There are also, as I mentioned, really very real risks to human health. Besides car vehicle or deer vehicle collisions, you can see the cases of Lyme's disease in Ottawa County have been trending upward since 2012. That's where the red arrow is. And in 2019, you see an especially alarming rise in cases. According to the CDC, deer are important sources of blood for ticks, and they carry those ticks to new areas. So the more deer you have to support the life cycle of ticks and transport them within the range of humans, the higher the risk for spread of Lyme disease. Who hasn't walked through Lake Forest Cemetery and seen people feeding the deer by hand? The deer no longer see humans as predators, and they're so hungry they'll take food from very unnatural sources. In summary, our goal is to protect human health, provide an environment where forests can survive and thrive, and that's only possible if we're able to manage the deer herd to the recommended biological carrying capacity. So what is the biological carrying capacity? It's defined as the maximum number of individuals of a species that the landscape can support over time. The Michigan Department of Natural Resources recommends managing herds at less than 20 deer per square mile. Of course, management is necessary because we no longer have natural predators such as wolves or cougars, which keep the deer population in check. So 200 acres is equal to 0.313 square miles. The remaining land within the city limits is comprised of homes, businesses, and parks, which are absolutely not suitable habitat for deer. Therefore, the biological carrying capacity of deer in Grand Haven is between 6 and 7. So here are recommended next steps. The City of Grand Haven purchased a drone using funds from the Grand Haven Area Community Foundation grant, which Jim secured, and private donations, which we have in hand. The city conduct a comprehensive drone survey to determine an accurate count of the deer. The city manages the deer to recommended biological carrying capacity with assistance from the USDA and DNR, or there are full-service private wildlife management companies that can get the permitting and manage the deer at our requests. The city conducts annual surveys and harvests to maintain a healthy herd and vibrant forests. And the city may want to consider a resolution to commit to the ongoing monitoring and management of our urban forests. So that brings me and my presentation to a close. I hope as quick as I had promised, and we look forward to any questions or suggestions that you might have.
Who has questions?
Can you just go back to the slide on your recommendations? Any idea on the, what it would cost to actually go through, to hire a full-service private wildlife management company to carry this out?
What we would do, and I can't get too close to loud enough without it, I think. We have a quote from one of those companies that it would cost $495 per deer. Now that's full service. When they end up, they clean up after themselves, and the remains of the deer are ready to donate to a food bank. We have contacted two food banks already, the Muskegon Rescue Mission, and there is a group down in Holland called the Doe Patrol. And up until now, what they've wanted to do is they want to urge hunters. Hunters that are out for a big rack or something, And so they're not as excited about taking does. That company, that organization, takes volunteers to drop their does off that are then processed and given to food banks. So any deer that are taken in any of our activities will be donated, and the venison will go to a food bank to feed hungry and to get a good protein source for anybody who needs it. If we were to need more, there is a group called Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger. I've talked with them. They have a number of other food banks besides the two that I've identified. So all of the deer will end up going to provide food and protein to people who are hungry and who need it.
So the drone survey would be managed by who?
The drone survey, what we're proposing is that the city buy a drone. We believe that we have enough donations. The grant from the foundation was for $3,000.
Okay.
That's not going to quite cover it. It's probably the drone that we would use would be $5,000, maybe a little bit, $550, something like that. But it could be used. It's a matter of changing the camera. We would use a thermal imaging camera to spot the deer. Best to do it, not the only way, but the best way to do it is do it when the ground is cold and there's a nice contrast between the warm-blooded deer and the ground, and when the leaves are off the deciduous trees.
Okay.
To clarify, I just want to say the data that is being collected, we've done that in conjunction with the USDA and the DNR, who's going to review the data, provide us, more information, as well as with the GVSU biologist that we've been talking to.
Okay.
Right. And there is a professor at Grand Valley who is not only a licensed drone pilot, but very experienced in doing these. It's my understanding, although I can't say for 100%, that the city does employ a drone pilot. but doesn't have the experience of flying over wooded areas to gather that data. Rob Larson's the professor's name, and he has said he'd be more than happy to help train or to be with a city employee to
Yeah.
conduct that survey.
Yeah. Well, I personally, you know where I stand. I think if we want to really do what you're recommending, that I think that's the deer management is kind of the first step in my mind anyways. I just remember my dad having Lyme disease, and he didn't know it. And I know what he went through. And I don't think people realize what a devastating
No.
disease it can be.
I'm a pharmacist by degree, I'm retired, but I made a fair amount of money because I ran a home infusion company that treated with a drug called Rocephin people who had Lyme's disease. And unfortunately, if we catch it early enough, we had good success, and if it wasn't early enough, some of these people were being treated for years
Oh, yeah,
to
absolutely.
try and knock it down or eliminate it.
Yeah. I just want to thank you for all your work, especially on this. I think it's very important. I think we have to decide I'm not speaking for the rest of council, but I think, we have to decide how we want to move ahead with this. I think there's been different opinions about deer management and in this community. But if people want to I think if people truly want to see a, new forest, then we have to do this. And I just hope that we can get the support of city council to make this work.
And obviously, the deer are just one of the threats to our forests.
Yeah.
I know Larry Burns has presented to you
Yeah.
guys in the past, and Larry's doing a phenomenal job with the invasive species, the adelgid, hemlock woolly adelgid, beech bark disease, and oak wilt. And you don't have to take a walk too deep into our forest to see the devastation. Just drive along Lake Street. When you get down close to the cemetery parking lot,
Yeah.
you can see where that little impromptu teepee is.
Yeah.
There's a tree that is just gone. And
Yeah.
there was one, I think it's been cleaned up maybe, because I didn't notice it last time I was in the cemetery.
Yeah.
And that particular disease can kill a tree in very short order.
Yeah, that's what we reported. So Tim, you're working with the group. I mean, I guess the best thing to do is try to, I don't know, I'm just talking for myself, putting together some type of budget so that we understand what the cost would be to move this forward in every single step. And then I think, if it's something that we as a council want to take a look at, but I think we need numbers to be able to really talk about it. But I want to thank you for what you've done.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
I have a few questions too.
Sure.
I just want to jump in here. Could you put your recommended plan up there again? Okay. I think this is an excellent plan, Jim, and I think what's lacked before is an ongoing system of management that's going, not a one-time, like it's solved, because it's an ongoing management, just as the invasive species are. The other point I want to make is when someone came to us, when we approved the entire forest management plan, what was very clear, it might not be clear to everybody in the audience, is that all the money that we would spend on the invasive species would be thrown out the window if we do not address the deer overgrazing of the understory. So I just want to put that little emphasis on the why all these parts are critical to a healthy ecosystem. And so we understood that when we passed the forest management plan. So I'm all on board, and I see all of your the benchmarking of what we could really support with, and very well sourced, but there's a part of me that says, wow, in 2007, we had 150, and then we took care of just 25, right? And
There's
so,
been two culls.
okay, two culls,
Harvest, I try to avoid the word cull.
right.
And there was another in 2017.
And
But talking to the experts that I've talked to, if we were to take 25 deer a time, we would never get rid of the deer.
Right, and that's what I'd like, I just don't have the, I'm going to say what is, because I know this is going to be on some constituents' minds, so I'm going to say this. 6 to 7 sounds like a really tiny number, compared to, but I don't know, probably because of the adjacent area. So I am supportive of the entire plan and a much more aggressive management of that population. I just don't know if I'm totally bought into the target of 6 to 7 deer for, so you need to work on me a little bit here.
No, and I totally understand, Karen. And as a matter of fact, my personal opinion is we can't get to 6 or 7 deer. And we don't need to get to 6 or 7 deer. We have to come up with a number that we can try to manage to.
Fair enough.
To be honest, there are basically 2 different carrying capacities. One that we quoted is what's called an ecological or a biological carrying capacity. The other is a social carrying capacity, and that basically is defined as how much will the city tolerate? How much will the citizens tolerate? And no, I agree. I mean, I'm obviously the one that's really engaged in this, and I think 6 or 7 is an unrealistic goal, but that is a statistic that we can quote. Ecological carrying, or the social carrying capacity is a nebulous number because it really depends on how much the city can tolerate. So it's a little more nebulous.
It's also a trade-off because I think we don't know, we haven't done the drone survey to know, but let's say if we had 150 deer or more today, we'd say, oh, look at the Lyme disease numbers. Okay, now we have an idea of what that has, given us, so how many do we have to take away to have better results? And I think that starts to get you closer to your social, but anyway, I think
Yeah.
there's some number, in there that we might be able to.
I agree.
Yeah.
A couple of things. One, I haven't lived in Grand Haven for 30 years, but I've been coming here for 30 years, and I remember when deer sightings were rare. So it's only more recently that you see 20, 30, 40 deer at a time.
Agreed.
So, and also remember what we're giving up in favor of the deer. We're giving up growth of new trees, we're giving up all the plants that sustain other animals and wildlife. So we are ceding the forest to one particular species. So I don't doubt that there's a social and an ecological carrying capacity, but if we want to see the health of our forests restored, we have to follow the science.
Agreed.
That's my opinion.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I guess along those lines, and how realistic is it that we get towards an ecological carrying capacity? So, I think the evidence is there to do something, but I mean, if getting to 6 or 7 is truly the number you need to get to have an ecological carrying capacity and actually have, new trees growing and new undergrowth and that sort of thing, are we ever really going to get there? I mean, and we can't do it in isolation either, right? Because there's other communities surrounding us as well that also have deer, and so are we just going to be in this like constant mode of just
Yes.
and we never act? But
Yes.
being in that constant mode, are we ever actually going to get to that magic number?
Well, so first of all, there's a hunt every year in the state of Michigan where hundreds of thousands of deer are harvested every year. So you've all seen Ottawa Parks is expanding their hunting in their own parks and actually giving tags for people. And if you don't bag a deer, they take your tag away the next year. That's how serious they are about managing the population to manage the health of their forests. So I don't know how realistic it is to get to 6 or 7 because we've never tried. We've done one hunt in 2009 and one in 2017. It is something that we will have to monitor and measure every year. And that's why we want to purchase a drone rather than contracting through the USDA, which would get very expensive every year. If we own our own drone, we can monitor the herd on our own.
We're not alone in this problem either. Back in my pharmacy school days, and you probably all heard this, nature abhors a vacuum. If we create a vacuum in Grand Haven, we will have deer migrating in from the townships and from the county. It's almost a certainty, which is the reason it's important that we have to monitor this on a regular basis, at least annually, and maybe more than that.
But the state is also picking up their effort to control deer because they're a problem in Meridian Township and Ann Arbor and communities across Michigan. And as a matter of fact, Jim is he's applying to be on a committee, correct, with the
Correct.
state, to look at urban deer populations and how to manage them, not only for the health of the deer, but for the health of the community and the health of the surrounding forests.
It's a very common problem. Norton Shores just did a harvest. Now, they have a little bit different topography and canopy than we do. They actually allowed hunters to come in with bows and kill deer.
Yep.
And, I live 80 feet from Duncan Park. It's across the street from me. I don't particularly want people in there shooting. I don't. It's gotta be reasonable. So the people that we would engage to do this are professionals, they're sharpshooters, they follow every rule that the DNR sets out. We'd have to get a DNR permit to do it. Won't be a problem to get it, but we have to get a DNR. So, and what I just heard not recently is one of these private companies that we mentioned, they don't use regular rifles. They use pellet guns. And because they are so accurate, you can hit the deer in the right spot in a pellet gun. One of the 25 that were taken at one time, 26 bullets were used to take 25 deer. That's how good they are. And I've talked to one of the people that were there, police officer, and he said, well, that one just didn't drop. And so we put it out of its misery with a second shot. One. So.
Lots for you to consider and discuss, but please let us know if you have any other questions or need any more references or resources. We'd be happy.
Mike? We've got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
2 minutes. We can bring them back during the meeting.
That's all right. I don't have much to say anyways, but I have to agree with Ryan. Seeing where my shop is, I see the deer come down the railroad tracks and they come from, I mean, if you want to be like one of our ex-presidents, we should build a wall, But that's not going to happen. And if we can't get our other communities to be involved at the same time, it's kind of fruitless because they have such great space to breed them and move them because they have a larger area than we have, as dense as we
Sure.
are with our population.
But
I
I
really
don't think
really
we-
don't want to tell everybody Lyme disease because they're not the only carrier of the ticks. We have a farm. There's deer out there, but there's more rabbits, and rabbits carry more ticks than they do deer do. If you look back at it and look at some of the history on it, you'll find out rabbits are the worst thing for ticks. Luckily, we have chickens on the farm, they eat the ticks. But the thing of it is, there's so many rabbits that I don't want to scare people saying deer are the only ones that transfer ticks.
White-footed mice also.
There you see, there's a lot, they're right, there's more than just deer, so I don't want to use that excuse
I mean, I can
that
send
they
you the
do, that
CDC
they,
reference where they
spread,
specifically call out
that
deer.
deer do it, but deer is not the only one.
No, of course, not the only one.
So
But
it's just
they
to
are
say that, but
contributing.
that's a scare tactic. I don't like using scare tactics to people saying that deer are the ones that are doing it.
It's not a scare
Because as soon as
tactic.
people do that, they think that right away when you start talking like that.
I'll
But there's
send
other
you some
there's other
papers.
animals out there that carry it.
Yeah, we did not mean for it to be a scare tactic, and we're happy to send you some papers that correlate deer populations to Lyme's disease, so it was absolutely not meant to be a scare tactic.
I know, but people, when you hear that, they say, when you say Lyme disease, you say deer, they put the two together and it's in their mind right away, so. But there's other animals out there that do it. But thank you for your.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Thank
And
you so much.
I know we won't solve
done.
all of the state's problems, but I'd like to get
All right.
a start on
So, Mike,
moving forward.
Mike,
Thank
we're
you.
about at that time. Did you have any more?
I'm done.
I will just close by saying that the advice I've given you from the outset of this conversation has been, bring council the most comprehensive, scientific, airtight data you can, including the best population survey that you can manage, so we have really objective data to make decisions for going forward. That's what we need in order to do our jobs best. That's the path you appear to be on, so I'd say keep going on that path. When you come to us asking for actual action, give us the tools we need to know that we're doing the objective scientific thing.
And you and I've talked about that, about the thermal imaging drone flyover is the most accurate way to count here.
Okay.
And that's what we need the drone for.
Right, and I think that for the city to have a drone would have multiple applications.
Sure.
So it'd be a handy thing to have. But we are out of time for work session. If there's no one that needs to bring them back during the
Thank you for all your work.
during the regular meeting, I'm going to adjourn the work session, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all for the time. Appreciate it.
All right, we're going to roll right into our regular meeting then. So welcome everyone to this regular city council meeting for Monday, March 4th. Mary, would you please call the roll?
Fritz,
Here.
Lowe,
Here.
McLaughlin,
Here.
Cummins,
Here?
Manetza.
Here. Our invocation this evening is by Reverend Dr. Jared C. Kramer, St. John's Episcopal Church. Please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. O Lord, our governor, bless the leaders of our land, that we may be a people at peace among ourselves and a blessing to other nations of the earth. To the president and members of the cabinet, to governors of states, mayors of cities, and all in administrative authority, grant wisdom and grace in the exercise of their duties. To senators and representatives and those who make our laws in states, cities, and towns, give courage, wisdom, and foresight to provide for the needs of all our people and to fulfill our obligations to our broader community. To judges and officers of courts, give understanding and integrity that human rights may be safeguarded and justice served. Teach our people to rely on your strength and to accept their responsibilities to their fellow citizens, that we may elect trustworthy leaders and make wise decisions for the well-being of our society, that we may serve you faithfully in our generation and honor your holy name. And Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, we pray that this evening you will send down upon those who hold office in the city of Grand Haven the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people, through Jesus Christ, my Lord. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have no appointments or reappointments this evening, so that brings us to the approval of the consent and regular agendas. I believe you have one change.
Yes, correct. I'd like to request that we move item 11E to new business. The contract language needs to be modified to reflect the $18,000 low bid award that's referenced in the resolution wording.
Okay, does anyone have anything else they'd like to change on the agenda? Need a motion to approve the adjusted agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. Any other questions on the motion? Please call the roll.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. So it brings us to our first call to the audience. This is first of two opportunities. At this time, members of the audience may address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address, will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present and would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. Who would like to address council?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Jamal Stewart. This is my wife, Nicole Stewart. We are residents of 14769 Lakeshore Drive here in Grand Haven for over 26 years. Wanted to be able to quickly introduce an option that is going to be coming in front of this committee here shortly, hopefully, to a program that we are starting that will be beneficial to both our community members as well as our community veterans. This program will provide vital services and resources to our community military service members, inspire community youth in skilled trades, as well as other opportunities through STEM activities that will be taught and participated with high school and teachers and students. This program, the Michigan Lakeshore Elemental Experience, has become Creative Community Entertainment, which is a nonprofit that I started with my wife, the largest target mission for us to date. Inspired by a variety of festivals and lakeshore events, the lake-based air show program is the first of its kind here in Michigan. Having started this venture back in August of 2023, it's been quite the journey. We have researched and allocated many necessary, vital, local, city, state resources to successfully be able to successfully execute this program's requirements and make it a successful impact to the community. As back in 1970s, where Grand Haven hosted its own air shows right here at the very Memorial Airport we know today. Grand Haven once again can bring back to life the awe of its actual air shows for itself and to stimulate the West Michigan lakeshores. Creative Community Entertainment excitingly awaits speaking to this committee, as well as those for the audience here in our community, and look forward to the opportunity to speak and give details about that. So thank you in advance for your time and your support.
Thank you.
Good evening, Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd like to first just mention that, yeah, we used to have a huge amount of trilliums back in the dune where Carol lives, and also tremendous numbers of flocks down in the ravines and across on Grand Avenue, and the deer have completely decimated all of them. I try to plant domestic ones as I can, but the deer just keep going after them. So anyway, it's a fantastic idea. We need to get some kind of program going. But the reason I'm here to speak is I wanted to give you an update on the CPRG, which is Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, and specifically the PCAP, which is the Prioritized Climate Action Plan. I've been talking about a potential plan for the Sim site and the old coal pile that consists of solar, pollinating garden, walking paths, battery, and picnic area by the river. Well, that plan was submitted and was accepted. So it is now part of the 4-county plan. It went to the EPA on March 1st. So the counties involved are Ionia, Montcalm, Kent, and Ottawa counties. So I want to say, you know, what does that say about that potential program? We had the GVMC, Grand Valley Metro Council in Caramita, which is similar to HDR, big environmental company that were in charge of looking at all the submissions, and they identified, I think it was just over 12 that made that plan. So I guess, you know, my bottom line is it's legitimate, it's real. I think we need to, and there's 100% grant out there too. So right now in the conceptual stage, or I should say a scoping stage, the project's been identified to cost $10.1 million. I'd like to see some support from council, from the city, because are we in the position to just ignore a potential for $10.1 million and fixing up Harbor Island, when we say it's going to take now between 60 and 80 million, are we willing to just say, we don't want to pay attention to 10 million because we've got, we're going to do some community engagement with it, which I think is great, but why not work in parallel? Why not apply for a grant? And if it comes through at 10 million, so be it. You know, like I say, it's praise the Lord if we can get it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Who else would like to address council?
Hello, Nancy O'Neill, 216 South 2nd Street. I commend Jim Hagan's proposal for a community solar project for the brownfield area of the old Sims site, and I hope you will support it as well. The project would transform a contaminated area into a beneficial source of energy, reduce CO2 emissions in our area, and offer recreational amenities as well. The Harbor Island Solar Energy Project has been selected for inclusion in the West Michigan Prioritized Climate Action Plan. If this project receives approval and funding from the relevant state environmental agencies, our community will benefit now and in the future. Your support and action are essential, as we do not know what financial incentives and assistance will be available in the future. Pivoting now from the message to the messenger, I think we should all recognize and appreciate the extensive time and expert advice Jim Hagan regularly shares with our community at these council meetings, as well as at the Community Energy Plan meetings, with always with remarkable modesty and respect for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Hi, Jean Madden, 1625 Gladys. So along with Jim and Nancy, I'd just like to voice my support for the community solar program. I think it's important because many people can't afford solar panels on their own homes, or they don't have the option because of tree cover, or their house is just not in a position to collect solar energy, but still want to see our grid greened more quickly. So I think it would be quite a feat for the city of Grand Haven to, engage in such a project, and we'd be leaders across the state of Michigan. So I also strongly support that proposal.
Thank you. Who else would like to address council? There will be another opportunity to address council later in the meeting, and there is a public hearing in the middle of this meeting regarding a particular issue at Colfax Street vacation. But if anyone else would like to address council at this time, now would be the time. Seeing no rush of people to the microphone, I will close the call to the audience. We'll move on. So now we will have a presentation of the first draft of our 2024-25 capital plan. Emily, are you presenting this?
I am.
Okay, please introduce yourself.
Emily Green, Finance Director for the City of Grand Haven. So just a little presentation, and then I'll have a few notes on that as well. Thanks. So this is the first draft of the presentation, first draft of the proposed capital plan. We, staff and department heads, continuing to discuss this in detail, and we will discuss it further with council at the work session on April 17th. The capital plan overview page shows the original and projected fiscal year 23-24, so the current year capital plan items, as well as the requested 24-25 capital plan items. The capital plan summary page details the totals of each fund and department with the original and amended projected fiscal year 23-24, the requested 24-25, and then future fiscal year 2026 through 2030 capital plan items. This assists in planning for long-term capital needs and helps identify projects for possible outside funding. And then this is the department-specific projects are listed on the pages, the following pages. with the budgeted totals, anticipated outside funding, and then the total project cost for each fund. And thanks, Tim. So again, this is the first draft of the capital plan. Staff and department heads, managers, et cetera, have worked hard to gather the information in totality. All necessary departmental items are listed in this massive list of capital projects. There's a reminder, it's important to list all of the items for awareness for future projects and costs, and also to identify available outside funding. The anticipated outside funding includes local, state, and federal grants. And listing the capital projects in the 6-year plan puts the city in a position to identify projects and then secure outside funding. If we don't have them listed, we have the potential for not being able to apply for that funding. The current and projected fiscal year 23-24 and requested 24-25 shows conservative needs at this point. There have been a lot of projects that have been put off, and we're listing them. And we went to staff and said, give us your conservative needs, and that's what's listed in the 23-24 and 24-25 years. We are well aware that we probably will not be able to do that. So pending review of actual budget line items, we expect there may be changes to this list, and what projects the city can actually afford in the next year and a half. Again, staff will continue to review and update the capital plan while working through the budget process, and the final capital plan will be included in the complete budget document.
Emily, when the outside funding anticipated compared to total project costs, is that number within those total project costs or in addition to?
In addition to. So the total project costs is the total that we would have to budget, and outside funding would be the revenue that could offset that. But I put the total project cost so we know, the city knows how much expense we are going to have, and then the potential outside anticipated funding is listed next to that.
So that would help to offset those costs?
Correct.
Okay. I just didn't want to start adding those numbers together and saying that was the cost.
Correct, and that's why I put the total project first.
Okay, and sometimes these are a little bit challenging to read through, especially for members of the public seeing it for the first time.
Yes.
Okay, questions?
It's a massive amount of money, I can tell you that.
Well, the 25, 26, 27, 26, 27 are inflated by the cost for Harbor Island.
Yeah, no,
So that's a big spike there.
you're the budget director. If you can put this all in a budget that we can live with, then I guess it's something we have to look at, but it just seems to me that there's a lot of items in there that maybe have to be deferred, so that in
And-
fact we can,
Right.
that
And
we
they
can
let-
pass a budget that makes sense. That's just my own personal.
And like I said, that there will likely be items that are moved.
Yeah.
But this is the initial first draft, and we wanted to list everything that we feel needs to be done in the next year and a half.
Okay.
Other questions?
No, I'm gonna say this is a lot to absorb in a weekend, and so I'm gonna say thank you for doing these, sequential, here's what we're thinking, here it is, so I can formulate my questions and maybe come back to you, even if it's one-on-one, Emily. Okay?
I welcome that, and again, this is, the work of department heads and managers, et cetera. So this is not me doing the work, or Ashley and me doing the work, this is your directors working together to put all of this, and the directors and the managers, supervisors, et cetera. So it's the full team putting this stuff together.
And again, as Emily had mentioned, the idea is to get this in front of you at this point in time in an incremental way so that you can prepare questions in advance of the budget work session on April 17th. So if you do have questions leading up to that work session, we encourage you to reach out ahead of time so we can have as close to as final of a product as we can at the work session. But yeah, certainly expect questions to come throughout the next couple weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Emily, I tell you what, and everybody that put this all together. I know this is a lot for everybody to absorb right now, but the thing, you're absolutely right, Ashley, we need to take a look at it, and if we have any other questions and things that we think it might not want to be in here, we can express our concerns at that time. But right now, it's the department heads is what they really wish to have, and so it's a good idea. It's a good start for us, so thank you so much.
Ryan, anything?
Nope, I don't have anything in particular to add. I think we do have some healthy fund balances in certain areas that, you know, if there's money there, things aren't going to get any cheaper. So, in deferring, it's going to be more expensive. So, yeah, and the more, and our staff, I think, has heard it loud and clear. The more we can leverage our dollars with grants, I mean, you guys have been killing it with you know, obtaining grants, leveraging our dollars that way, and other outside, you know, funding sources as well. So, yeah, good.
Okay, yeah, and Ryan, I fully agree with what Ryan just said. These things don't get cheaper with time, so. This is a list of things and best estimates as to what needs to be done by the city to maintain the city and improve the city. It's capital investment. It's, we owe it to the citizens to take care of our infrastructure, all our city assets. That all costs money, and when we push projects out, they get more expensive instead of less, and so the demands for our money climb over time. So that's not a great strategy. Sometimes it's a necessary strategy. But we should be careful about deferring projects. They need to be well-defined projects, and I think they generally are. And you prioritize them to do the most important things in the order you can. And we have to live within our means, but we have some means to deal with this. And if we can have grants, great. We should always look at this not as a wish list, but as the things we need to do to take care of business. So it's great that it's in front of us. It is, as Ashley said, presented to us in an incremental manner so that we can manage the budget, because the budget's a huge undertaking. We do this every year. And it's great for the public too, because I always encourage members of the public to pay attention to our capital plan, our administrative fees, all the other things that go into establishing the city's budget, and how we do business, and how we manage the public's money. So I don't have anything specific line items to point out at this point. I just appreciate the effort, and a sobering list of things to do, but it's a realistic list as well. And so we should never take our eye off the point of a capital plan. That's just to make sure that we can get things done and take care of business. So that's all I've got. Ashley, anything else you wanted to add?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. If there are no questions from anyone else, then Emily, thank you for this, and we will study it carefully. All right, that brings us to our consent agenda. Marie, would you please read the consent agenda?
Item A, approve the bills memo in the amount of $754,212.82. Item B, receive and confirm a Whitetail Solar Project power purchase commitment authorization by the Board of Light and Power under its energy services agreement with MPPA. Item C, award the low bid contract with RCS Construction LLC out of Grand Haven, Michigan in the not-to-exceed amount of $35,989.97 for the replacement of 8 showers at the municipal marina, and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item D, award the low bid contract with Painting Services of West Michigan in the not-to-exceed amount of $15,162.94 for painting of the ceiling, walls, and seal coating of the floor of the maintenance hangar, and authorize the mayor and the city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Item E, award the low bid contract with, item E was moved to new business. Item F, approve the fireworks display agreement between the City of Grand Haven and Pyrotechnical Fireworks, Inc. to provide the city 4th of July and New Year's Eve fireworks services through 2026, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. Item G, award the low bid 2-year contract agreement with Western Telecom, Inc. of Holland, Michigan in the not-to-exceed amount of $1,500 annually for fiber optic cable screening and protection services, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements. Item H, a resolution to support the Ottawa County Road Commission's 10-year road millage renewal request to be considered by voters in the August or November 2024 election. And item I, award the low bid contract to Reith Riley Construction of Wyoming, Michigan in the budgeted amount of $497,850.10 for the 2024 street resurfacing services, and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the necessary agreements.
Thank you. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support?
Motion by Fritz, second by Lowe, to approve the consent agenda. Any questions on the motion?
I have one quick question.
Sure.
If I might. How much does the city actually get under the road millage on a yearly basis? Does anybody know that?
Derek would know that.
Good evening, Your Honor, fellow council members, Derek Gates, Public Works Director. So we get about just shy of $700,000. We have been spending every penny of that on resurfacing, not including staff time or anything, just contractors and
Yeah.
engineers, so.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, Derek, is it the case that any money collected by the county from the municipality is returned to the municipality for this purpose?
That's correct. Whatever's collected in the city of Grand Haven gets returned to the city. And the county has a very similar approach in the townships and the non-other road agencies where they try to spend those monies that are collected in those townships. And as you can understand, some of those townships are smaller, some are bigger. So some may have to wait a few years to get a project, but they try to balance that very equitably.
We
So-
get ours back.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
It's a good partnership. Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. All right, now we're going to have a public hearing. I'm going to open a public hearing concerning the resolution to vacate a portion of Colfax Avenue right-of-way located between Berry Street and Albee Street. I'm opening the public hearing at this time. Is there someone who would like to present the vacation request?
Good evening, Brian Urquhart, City Planner. This is the final step of a street vacation. As you recall, back in November, I believe, there was a resolution of intent to vacate Colfax between Albee and Ferry Street. That was passed 3-2 by City Council. And per the ordinance, it's required to have 90 days. Within 90 days, the Planning Commission shall hold a public hearing and notify property owners within those parcels that are affected by the street vacation. That was held at the February 13th meeting last month, and we didn't receive any written communication, but we did have one comment that was not in favor. The Planning Commission ultimately, after holding the public hearing, voted 5-1 to recommend denial of this street vacation, and the main reason is that they felt going from, as it was commented at the meeting in November, that's quite a big step to go from a street to closing it off entirely, vacating that there could have been other measures, and it was cited the 7th Street Avenue for the Grand Haven Middle School, as a possible way to do that as a process. They felt as though that because they own all those properties adjacent, that would be a worthwhile effort to vacate that and be part of like a campus type of situation where they would have a drive and the plans that are in the packet. However, Planning Commission ultimately said this is just too much to ask in one step, should be considered a last resort. That's reflected in the meeting minutes from February 13th. I did call the architect that's working on it, let them know. They kind of felt as though that a recommendation for denial by the Planning Commission likely would mean City Council may have the same sentiments, so I don't know if they'll be here today or not, but have not heard anything since from them. So even though it was a recommendation for denial to have the vacation of the street, it still has to go forward with a public hearing here tonight with the City Council, and then ultimately a vote by City Council to, reject or deny that request. So.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak during this public hearing? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. We will entertain a motion or resolution. Maria, would you please read this?
Consideration by City Council of a resolution to vacate a portion of Colfax Avenue right-of-way located between Ferry Street and Albee Street. Planning Commission recommends denial.
So I would entertain a motion to either approve or deny, but I would like to actually pass a motion with an affirmative vote on whatever the motion is. So if you would intend to deny, we would have a motion to deny. If you
I'd
intend to
like to
approve.
make that motion to deny the resolution to vacate.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Lowe, second by Fritz, to deny the vacation request. Any questions on the motion? Or on the process or anything?
No. Can I ask questions, or is?
Yes?
So Brian, planning commission denies it, and they said it was just too much.
Correct.
Well, what is their, yeah, what would they live with? I don't understand. They said it's too much.
I feel as though they could probably have other less intense ways of traffic control that would be outside of just vacating the street to public right away. Say maybe they could put like the gates that they have there, they felt that that was appropriate. Maybe other more opportunities for traffic guards there, painted lines, signage, things like that, they felt would be the next step. And if that didn't work and that was required, then they would say they would probably consider to go and say, well, maybe vacation would be the right option. So that's kind of where the overall sentiment of the planning commission was, is that it was just too big of a leap to go forward from street to no street for public use.
I mean, they spent a lot of money on plans.
They did.
Did anybody give them any type of guidance before they decided to go through this huge process and spend oodles of money on plans and specs?
They started that in their presentation they started this whole process in their presentation from 2019. So it took a long time to go that process. But there is an inherent risk, obviously, that you don't know if it's a guarantee to vacate approved street like that. So they started that before I started here, and they went through the process to apply for the resolution of intent. They got that, and then they moved forward, obviously, with the public hearing and the plans. And they may consider other options, but right now, I think they understand where the city's at by not gonna, not honor the vacation of the right of way. So.
I still think it's a good idea, but it's okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions before we vote?
Just to understand, so my understanding is that they had some sort of like a neighborhood meeting or something with, and I know these folks they own a lot of properties adjacent to the street, but do we know what the turnout was, more generally beyond that?
They had that on January 8th. They had 8 people show up and they were in favor, and they were all located, I believe, just to the south of the First Reformed Church, that would be bordering Waverly, and they were in favor of it. Now, they got a list with assistance from the city to have all property owners and occupants notify within 1 block of Colfax and Grant and Waverly. So they had that kind of turnout, and they got a favorable, but it wasn't necessarily, a public meeting. It was just like a stakeholder engagement. They had that, so.
Brian, as I recall, when we discussed this before it went to the planning commission, that I believe the mayor actually identified some alternative, steps that could be taken, that if we indeed vacated, there's no way to get back that public street in the future, and that there were some other successful models within our city's history that could be, but since it passed, it had to go through, this process. And for all those reasons, because there wasn't an alternative prior to vacating, that's the rationale behind I think there is a solution that could help them get 90% of what they want without going to the vacating, given they own their property. So I don't think this is the end of the game, end of the road for their plans, so to speak. I think we can work together without vacating. At least that was my understanding, Mayor, from what you stated at our last.
Well, and this, I believe, was the conversation at Planning Commission as well. I attended that meeting, and they expressed similar thoughts that there were other measures that could be taken that it would be less than a vacation. And it's not to say that you can't revisit this at some point in the future if nothing else works. But I expressed my reservations previously.
Yeah, we did the same thing up there by Lake Shore Middle School. And we did a lot of negotiating on that in order to leave the road open yet, because remember, school only goes for so long, and the rest of the summer and the rest of the year, it's open, so people can still use it. It's the same thing over there, that I'm sure they could probably come up with something in the same order.
Okay. Any other questions? Are we ready to vote? Would you please call the roll?
Lowe,
Yeah, it's yes
Yes.
to
Yes to
deny
deny.
the motion.
Yes to
Thank you.
deny.
Yes.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
No.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. Thank you. Brings us to our first item of new business. Would you please read this?
Item A, consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve the service agreement with HDR of Michigan for Task Order 006 Harbor Island Future Use Engagement in the not-to-exceed amount of $98,135 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Motion by Fritz, second by Ryan Cummins. Derek?
Good evening again. Derek Gatis, Public Works Director. So this is the contract for HDR to do our public engagement on the future use of Harbor Island. All but, let's see, $59,740 is covered by a grant that the city received for this purpose a few months ago. The total cost then is the $98,135. Gives a all-in city cost of $21,345. The rest of the grant requirements would be staff time for the match. But staff have conferred with HDR, even the community action group, in regards to, what does the city really want or need for an engagement of this purpose, to kind of plan out the future use. And so we start off with a soliciting online or virtual feedback in March. And most of the schedule actually revolves around the second date, which is Saturday, April 13th, which is actually an on-site public engagement. Trying to get the community out there if they want for a couple hours to actually see the site. We'll have some ideas the HDR will bring, their staff will be on site. I followed up by a month later, Wednesday, the 22nd of May, where we'll have actually 2 evenings of public engagement, some really fruitful idea processing in those 2 days by HDR staff, and then a follow-up to City Council on June 3rd to what those are. So at that point, the council can accept the proposals, or or any action you might want, just to either accepting or denying, or proposing those ideas. But I think HDR has done a great job in the past with our community action group and our open houses, and I look forward to seeing them come forward with and engage the community on these. I think we're going to get a lot of ideas, a lot of feedback, and they've got a challenge ahead of them to grips that into maybe 3 possible ideas, and then of course there'll be some sort of budgeting or estimation of what those ideas would cost. So, if council has any questions for me?
Any questions?
What is the 21,345 in staff time? What is staff's involvement in this now to make up the 21,000?
So in the grant that we applied for, we said the staff would be involved in this whole process, and so our labor and time would be accounted for as far as our match money, if you will.
Okay.
In-kind services, correct?
Correct. The 21,000 is actually what we're going to be paying in cash to HDR for the balance of the grant dollars
Okay.
and what HDR is, so, and then the rest would be staff time.
I just have a hard time. I mean, we don't know what's gonna happen there. I mean, we could very well, when it's all said and done, that residential could be allowed there, residential, commercial, I mean, we don't know what's gonna be allowed there, so I know I voted for it the first time, but I'm thinking more and more, how are you gonna, are we wasting people's time? I mean, I may be off base, but I just don't see it. I don't see why we're jumping into this now, until we have a little better feeling on where we are. Because we don't know. We have no idea. We keep testing and testing and testing and testing and spending more and more of our money, and a lot of it. And I don't know. I just think that, I don't know. I'm having a hard time with that thought, Derek.
Sure.
Thanks.
Well, I think it is a good point Kevin makes. I mean, are they going to, I mean, the benefit of having HDR do it is that they have all the background detail and kind of know where we're at. So I guess are the three options going to be like, they're also best estimate of what are realistic options? You know, it's one thing to say the community said this and here's an option and here's like in a perfect world, if we had no environmental regulations, what it would cost to remediate to this level. But is that ultimately what we're going to get? It's like, okay, these are the realistic three options that we could probably look at.
Well, I think what you're going to get is three options that the community wants to see there, and then you'll see the options or the actual estimates for true remediation to that level. Because as Councilmember McLaughlin said, you know, residential is an option, but it could be the most expensive one and completely, you know, unattainable for our finances. Right. But if that's what the residents want, that's what we're looking to hear. I don't hear a lot of people say they want condos out there or residential, but which is the highest level of remediation.
Yeah, right. No, I understand.
But whether or not it's open space or industrial or commercial or a mix or natural, you know, what those things might entail.
And HDR doesn't have any concerns with doing this process now? This is the time, the right timing, considering as they're starting to look at remediation alternatives?
Yeah, at some point, they're going to ask us, well, what level do we want to remediate to? And if we don't have an answer, then we'd have to pause everything and get that answer from the council with those dollars. So I think it is a little premature if in the mindset of, you know, are we going to build tomorrow or redevelop? No.
Right.
But if we hear, you know, one sounding resonating idea of what they want, then we can march forward with those ideas. Or if it's too expensive, to say, well, I know everybody wants that, we can afford it, but we can afford this.
Right. I think we have to start with getting the community's input on what they'd like to see, you know, ideally, and then start to put some constraints on that. Because to say right out of the, you know, block, we can't do that, or that's not something that we considered, let's just find, you know, let's find out. I mean, I think we've got a lot of smart people in this community that know a whole lot more about the environment sitting in this room, you know. So I think there are going to be some some things that kind of coalesce. So I'm supportive of moving forward and getting that input now before we get too far along.
Derek, that's like how big of a team are they working with on this? I mean, I assume it's probably a combination of obviously their engineers, but urban planners are part of their team and everything as well.
Correct. The team that'll be coming in for most of this is coming from out of state, actually, Oklahoma. They're their home base. And they're planners. They do this everywhere.
Okay.
The 2-day charrette was really pushed by them, saying this is what most communities are doing, and works really well. We added in city staff, you know, pushed towards, well, let's have three different options. You know, an online version, an on-site version, and then of course like the open house version. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Mike, anything?
No, I'm looking forward to them, because in order for us to do anything, we have to have a plan put in there. If we want to go for grants or anything, if we don't have nothing set in stone, what direction do we go? You know, you can't get anything if you don't have a plan. And our legislators have been telling us that all along. They like to help us getting money, but if you don't have a plan, they can't, present it to anybody. So this is one step toward that. So I gotta say, I'm for it. I think it's a good move for us.
And just to add in, the remediation levels, well, residential is the highest. You could have a couple of those different development ideas. Let's say it's open space compared to industrial. They could be the same remediation levels. So just because, maybe one, you have 50-50 on two ideas, the remediation level is the same, we can march forward to that level, and the council can ultimately, make that decision in the future of what the actual redevelopment is.
Okay, and I guess that my feeling is that it's always a good idea to know the sense of the community, but there needs to be an informed process. We need to make sure that as people entertain ideas for what they would like to see on Harbor Island, that they understand that, as you just said, and as Ryan said and others, the level of remediation is dependent on that future land use, and the cost is also tied into that. So you pick this, if you pick a passive use or a recreational use, it's one level. Living there, occupying the site full-time, totally different. All those things need to be very clear to the public, and then we can get a sense of what they, not only what they want to see there, but what they think is realistic to do there and what they're willing to have the community bear for costs. So all those things need to come out, but it's never a bad idea to go to the people and ask, but let's make sure that they are not working in a vacuum, that they can understand what the questions imply.
And one thing to add to that is I don't know if we know what that remediation level is at this point for any of those levels. It's probably going to be a range because EPA
I'm assuming it is.
and Eagle have not made determinations what that is. And so.
Yeah, that's only one piece of this puzzle, and the other piece is what remediation would be acceptable regardless of land use.
Correct.
And that may turn out land use is not even relevant.
Yeah.
We don't know. There's too many balls in the air at this point, but we got to start somewhere.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Ready to vote? Just please call the roll.
Fritz?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
No.
Lowe?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes.
This motion passes.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item B, consideration by City Council of a resolution to approve a professional services agreement with Avonmarsh Consultants, Inc. for the Sluka Field improvements and the not-to-exceed amount of $76,700 and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents. Administration recommends approval.
Can I get a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. Is this another Derek explanation, or is Dana here?
Dana's present.
I think it's
Dana's
Dana.
here.
All right, good evening, council. So before you is consideration for a professional service agreement with Avonmarsh. They're our engineering consultant. This time they're coming forward with a proposal for design services and part-time construction inspection during the construction of improvements to Sluka Field on the east end of the city. If you recall, we've applied a few times for a grant for Sluka Field improvements that includes accessibility improvements, accessible dugouts, bleachers, new parking lot. Right now, there's that unpaved space that would be converted over to actual paved parking lot, as well as new fencing for the site. So far, all we've had is an estimate of the work to be completed. We just received word this past fall that we will be in receipt of those grant funds. So we're excited after multiple attempts to be receiving those funds. The project itself is estimated at $587,900. So 50% of that would be split with the city, and the other half would be through the grant funds. And in order to prepare for that project, we reached out to Avonmarsh to prepare a proposal for your consideration to begin design services and the construction inspection services, so we know those costs. So they have put forward a proposal that keeps us on track for spring 2025 construction of those activities. And bidding would, I think, happen this fall, which is favorable before we get into the next construction season. So hopefully we can take advantage of some good pricing. But I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
All right, who has questions?
Sorry, Dana.
Okay, that's okay.
Their design fee is 13% of the estimated construction cost. Is that in line with what we
Yes.
typically accept?
Yep, that's what we,
Big number.
13% has been the amount with all of our past projects, especially since we rebid the engineering services. So that is consistent.
Okay. They're making the money.
And please keep in mind, that's for design and the construction inspection. So it's not only design. I just want to make sure that's clear.
But it's split 38,000 for design, and
Correct.
38,000 for
Inspection.
inspection. And
Yep,
how
correct.
much inspection is it going to be to put in 2 dugouts? But that's okay. Go ahead. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Mike?
Oh, I'm for this for the simple fact is it's a blighted area pretty much. If you look at the rest of the field and everything around there, looks good except for the dirt and everything else that's back there. So this is gonna clean it up, and make the field look much better. And it's a well-used little area, that whole area. If you go out there sometimes, you'll see a lot of kids out there and around, so. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Everyone else? Ryan, Karen?
I do, I guess I didn't think about it before Kevin said it, but it is kind of interesting. I mean, the construction, monitoring, and engineering portion of this it does seem, yeah, I mean, it's not like an extensive road project that we're on-site monitoring or something like that.
Can't take too much
I'm not an
effort to look at
engineer,
two-
so.
Two dugouts, but that's all right.
And, in a parking lot.
Yeah.
But I don't know,
Alright.
maybe there's more to, that seems to be.
I was just gonna say, if you take a look at the scope of services and that portion of the agreement or the proposal, it's more than inspecting the work that's being done. There's a lot of coordination, there's
That's true, yep.
and with the parking lot, there's technical specifications that need to be met more than someone setting out dugouts. So I don't want to get too in the weeds on the dugout side of things. The parking lot, there are also requirements by the Ottawa County Drain Commission as well that need to be met. So there's technical work that needs to go on as well.
Yep, that's fair. Yeah, and they're not on site the whole time either, so. All right, I'll raise it now because Sluka Fields come up. That piece of trim, and I rarely do this in a council meeting, but that piece of trim that's missing, that was since the last construction. Like shortly after, there's a piece of blue trim that's
Okay.
missing on that new building, and it drives me nuts every time I walk by.
We'll
or
make
drive
sure we
by. And
follow up
I
on
understanding
it.
a while back that there was the piece was ordered, and I know everybody's been busy, but I
Ryan, I reported that almost very shortly after it was built, it was loose.
Yeah, it was shortly after. It has
I
been like that for a
remember-
while.
If you remember, I brought it up here saying that we needed to be taking attention on it.
So.
I agree with you 100%, because I'm out there, I look at it.
Yeah, I
bugs,
drive by every day.
the cracks in the concrete. I can make a list if you want me to.
Fair enough. So that blue trip. All right.
All right.
Thank you for the
your work on
feedback.
this. We were lucky to get this grant, so good work on the team's part. So
I suspect the blue trim was pre-existing and not part of this project.
correct.
But
I'm
it
just-
does.
I'm on tangent.
But if we're going to talk about construction administration and inspection and such, punch lists are part of that.
Absolutely.
Making sure the items on the punch list are done.
That is true. Yeah.
And so the job's not done until all the paperwork is done, as they say. Karen, did you have anything?
No.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure that the breakdown between design and construction administration and such is pretty arbitrary, but it adds up to this number, and that's really what we're approving. So I think that, it's a long time coming on this work. It's not cheap to get stuff done. The longer we wait to get stuff done, the more it will cost. So let's take it and be happy. Any other questions? Ready to vote? Please call the roll.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. Okay, one more item of new business.
Item E from consent agenda that's been moved to new business C. Award the low bid contract with Dave Cole Decorators, Inc. of Sparta, Michigan in the not-to-exceed amount of $18,000 for recoating the roof of Hangar Row A and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the necessary documents.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin. And this was moved because of an error in the contract language as included in our packet, correct?
Correct.
That was an error in the dollar amount,
Yep.
and that's been corrected. What was the actual dollar amount then?
It was identified over I believe the award amount was listed as what was the second lowest bid. It should have been translated as the $18,000 amount identified within your resolution this evening.
Okay. Any other questions on the motion? No. Ready to vote? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Yes.
McLaughlin?
Yes.
Lowe?
Yes.
Cummins?
Yes.
Manetza?
Yes. All right, that brings us to our report by city council. Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I'll go, and we had a fast work session. There was a lot of information covered, but I really do appreciate the work of the Sustainability and Energy Commission and all the different subcommittees, forest management, and then obviously the subcommittee, deer management. Hopefully, any questions, please don't take that as not being, at least from me, supportive of your work and your time that you're spending. And it is an issue that needs to be tackled. I just don't think there's an easy way to tackle it. And I think, but you folks have been diving in and looking at all of the different details. And so some good work's being done. So I just want to make sure that made it out there, that I appreciate your work and your time and your dedication. And that's a touchy one, right? That's out there, but hey, I mean, it needs to be dealt with. And I appreciate you guys mentioning Rosie Mound, because I think that enclosure really does say it all when you're out there and you see, when the deer can't get to it and what the undergrowth actually could look like. It's a big difference. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo his statements. We had just a few questions for you, Jim, but I think you and the team have done an outstanding job of putting together a very detailed, science-based, plan. And while I may have a few questions about the actual target, I am on board 100% with, the plan that you've laid out. I think it's a very well thought through plan. So thank you for all your work, you and your team.
Is that it? Okay, anyone else?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You don't mind?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Nothing about Detroit today?
Go.
Okay.
You go first. No, you go first.
I just got one quick thing. I want to thank Lieutenant Nicole Hudson. She's in the process of spearheading National Cereal Day, if anybody saw that. And she's kind of challenging everyone to bring cereal to boxes of cereal that they're going to donate to the Salvation Army. And I happened to donate some today, and it's something that, I guess the Salvation Army is running out of cereal, and they asked us and kind of challenged the city to do it, and Nicole's taking it on, and hopefully we get a lot of boxes of cereal.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I got to thank her. Thank her for doing that.
That's it. Cereal's not only just for breakfast,
Oh, that's right. That's what one guy wrote.
I know my kids, when they were growing up, it was, whenever they were hungry, they always grabbed the cereal and went. So that's a good thing to do. So please donate, help us out, bring it to the police department and help her out. Very good. I attended the John McDonald presentation he had on all his paintings and on the slavery chill. And I tell you, it was quite an emotional thing. Karen, I think I seen you there. Were you there or not? I seen somebody there. But anyways, it was just his presentation on slavery itself and all his paintings that he has. It was just, what a presentation. It makes you really think about, even today, we have a problem yet today, and how the African Americans, how they're being treated and stuff. It's through the system.
But John gave a great, great presentation there for us. And I recommend anybody has a chance to, if they're, I don't know if they're still over there or not, but it'd be nice to see the paintings. And also I went downtown this past weekend for the Leap Loop, I think they called it. And they had a little punch card, and you go down there and you go from business to business to business. And I went to all 36, my wife and I went to all 36 of them that were on the thing there. But I tell you, I recommend everybody to do that at least one time, to go into the stores, even if there wasn't something else going on, and see what we have down there. There are some very good businesses, I tell you, and they have some very unique items. A lot of people went down there, they may not have bought something this time, but I tell you what, there's a lot of ideas that I am. There's some presents that I see for some people I'm going to get, so that was very interesting to see a lot of people down there, and that was a good time. So I want to thank, who's the guy from Matt Kite? He started, the young kid there, and just to fill something to void up in the wintertime, once a month and that, so it worked out very good. And baseball season will be starting. You want me to say it? He's already mentioned say Tigers, so I'm hoping to predict maybe at least, I'd like to say take the division, but I'm probably thinking maybe second place. But I'd like to say, let's take the division this year. I'm optimistic, as long as pitching stays good. And that's all.
Okay, well, you got to set your sights high. I just wanted to report that last Tuesday, I attended a meeting in Lansing with the Michigan Municipal League to talk about pending legislation. There's a set of Senate bills which would modify the 1994 Michigan environmental law, NREPA law. And one of them in particular, Senate Bill 606, and you can look this up and read it for yourselves, promotes some ideas for modifying standards for remediation, which are a little bit concerning to me, considering the opportunities in this community for brownfield remediation, for some of the challenges for that, and particularly for our harbor project. But one of the things that three of the things that were in this bill was that all remediation of groundwater should be brought to drinking water standards, regardless of whether or not anyone's actually drinking that water, regardless of how difficult that is. Groundwater would have to be cleaned up to drinking water standards instead of a current less than drinking water standards, which might be an industrial or a commercial, something which is not suitable for drinking. Another one is that future land uses would not be considered in remediation strategies, that you couldn't say we would not have a residential use. We would have a use which didn't penetrate the ground, didn't require permanent occupancy, therefore lesser degree of remediation. This bill would do away with consideration of future land uses in remediation strategy. And finally, it would say it would require that any solution to a pollution remediation which is technically feasible must be implemented. Technically feasible doesn't necessarily say that it would be a practical matter, that it's the best solution for the situation, but just that it could be done, therefore it must be done. And so it's a pretty ambitious bill, and it's well intended, but it's we even had a representative from Eagle who was at the meeting who said they hadn't engaged with the people who submitted the legislation, that they wanted to talk to them about potential effect on redevelopment and reclamation of land and how practical that would be under these conditions. So it's one of those things that comes up in the legislature that MML keeps a track of for us. We have a committee that goes and talks to them about the community reactions. And so we get feedback back to the legislature as to how communities think about this, and perhaps throw a little bit of caution into some of the things that they propose that we do. So this is one of those that I enjoy going to these things, learning about the legislation that's pending and whether or not that's really the right solution for the communities. So this is one of those that we don't know if the legislation will go anywhere or not. Will probably be modified, and MML serves a lobbying purpose for the cities of Michigan to bring their concerns and potentially change legislation before it gets through the process. But that's one of those, let's keep an eye on what they do in Lansing. They're always out to help us. Sometimes their help is more help than we want. So that's the only thing I've got. So it's up to you now to report by city manager.
Just really briefly for the benefit of the public, I've made note to you all, but we did, upon closure of our RFP for waterfront paid parking study and implementation, we did receive 7 proposals in response to that RFP last week. It is taking staff a little bit of time, as it's more than we anticipated, to pull out comparables and complete an analysis for your review, but we do hope to have some recommendation back to you at the point of your second meeting in March.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. It brings us to our second call to the audience. This is a second opportunity for members of the audience to address council on any item, whether on the agenda or not. Those addressing council are asked to provide their name and address, will be limited to 3 minutes of speaking time. Council will hear all comments for future consideration, but will not have a response at this time. Those not physically present who would like to call in may dial 616-935-3285. Who would like to address council?
Jim Hagan, 400 Lake. I'd like to congratulate the BLP on the Whitetail project. I think it's great that they keep pushing forward with more and more solar, reducing our carbon footprint, and I think they're really setting an example for all the communities around us. By the way, that project is 2.15 megawatts of DC power. And the Harbor Island Community Garden is 2.62. So just to give you an idea of the sizes involved in all this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? See no others, I will close the second call to the audience. And at this point on our agenda, I would entertain a motion for the council to go into a closed session for the purpose of reviewing an attorney's opinion pursuant to the Open Meetings Act. Could I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Fritz, second by McLaughlin to go into closed session. Any questions on this? Please call the roll.
Fritz,
Yes.
McLaughlin,
Yes.
Lowe,
Yes.
Cummins,
Yes.
Manetza.
Yes. So for members of the audience or the viewing public or anyone else, when we come back from our closed session, we will simply adjourn. So there'll be no more to see and do here, but we will come back into open session to close.